we are ready to go, buddy.
All right.
So it's first off, it's actually pretty awesome that I get to actually see you because I haven't seen you in such a long time. I feel like we got.
I don't think we're missing much, but whatever.
Well, I feel like when you first came to California, it's like that. As we were talking before we started this, how we had that one player, Alan, who lived in SoCal. You were in Oklahoma, and literally, it's like the same week, you guys just like swapped. Like of all places to move to, you moved here and he moved there. It's like, I think we got a fair trade. I think we made out.
Yeah. I did get to meet Alan once, and it was kind of neat. It was like, hey, nice to meet you. See you. Bye.
Good to see you. Bye. Can I help you pack? But I mean, he's been a great guy still to this day. So every once in a blue moon, he'll send me a message, and I do see an order from him on VelaCards. But he brought a friend of his that used to play, and his friend was very competitive. And when he got beat by guys like Drew and Vic, because we have some pretty in SoCal area, we had some really top players, and so these guys, Albert. And these guys would, build some incredible decks. And so he ran up against that wall. I mean, he wasn't a bad player like that, but then he got upset and we never saw him again. Alan still stuck around, but we never saw his friend again.
That happens, unfortunately.
So it's like, I don't recall, did you and I meet before you came to California? I don't think.
Yes. Well, before I moved here, we had been talking about selling some cards, but I was coming out here for our initial to bring Jem, that's my gal, to bring her out here to see what California was like. We took a week-long trip, and we went to Disneyland, we went to the ocean, did a few different places, and we crossed paths because we were talking about me selling you some cards. And so we met up at like a McDonald's or something.
I do remember that. I was just telling my wife that we met up at a restaurant like that where I met you guys, and I think I ended up buying some cards from you.
Yeah. And then once I got here, then we started coming to the tournaments and what have you.
Yeah, then doing the ACMTs every year, it's like that, which I get asked by because I think the last couple of years we've taken off, and there was talk about doing one this year possibly, and then of course everything's happened. What's going on? Now I'm getting asked, hey, when things kind of get back to normal, whatever that is, do you want to do one in 2021? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm down with it as long as there's players to come out and play. I got kind of, not that I got tired of seeing you guys, but I got tired of seeing the same faces all the time. It's always the same 4 or 5 guys that showed up, and that was it. And that's kind of where Worlds stood with me too. It's why for the first time in 10, 11 years, I didn't prize support Gen Con because it's just the same 4 or 5 guys. And I'm like, just let me ship you out stuff and you guys divide it amongst yourself and have a good day.
I've kind of been concerned about that as well, feeling like the World Championships aren't really the World Championships.
Exactly.
It's more like the Central U.S. Championship. So like maybe that's the U.S. title. And the World Championships, since we don't see the kind of travel we saw in the mid-2000s where you had Singapore coming over, you had guys coming up from, maybe we'd get one from Chile, I don't know if they could make it or not, but you had people from other countries coming in, so it felt like a world championship, much the way, wrestling titles aren't really a world title until they've been defended outside of their home country.
I'm definitely going to ask
but
that.
Now the climate has just changed so much that nobody's getting free tickets to WrestleMania. Nobody's able to justify, and there's no corporate sponsorship to say, yeah, we'll fly you into the country.
It's funny you mentioned that because I had something planned for 2020, but things didn't work out. So with some of my connections, and I mean, I work with a lot of different talents like that. So I don't really like to ask them for a lot, but I was working up on getting something for a nice prize for Gen Cons like that. It would have been a ticket to WrestleMania.
Wow. That's awesome.
And either WrestleMania or another major pay-per-view of some kind.
Sure.
Or even at the very least, maybe a pair of tickets or something like that for a local Raw or SmackDown, something like that, at the very least. But I was in talks with some people like that about possibly getting that. It was something that could have been done.
That's awesome.
But, wasn't to be, I guess. But, and then again, I didn't want to make that as an offer, when it's going to be like 6 guys showing up. I really wanted to see, at least double-digit numbers coming out. Like, I want to win those tickets or something,
Sure. That seems justified.
But let's see here. So for those who don't know, who in the hell is Creed?
I ask myself that on a daily basis, I think.
Well, I'm
But
asking myself now too, because I'm hoping you'll, enlighten me.
well, I got into the game not quite on the ground floor, but shortly thereafter on the stairs to the second floor. No later than that, we'll put it. I had an interest in CCGs in the 90s, but I didn't really know a lot of people to play, so it ended up just being a collection device. I might as well have been collecting baseball cards, which, oddly enough, that's actually what got me interested in this. Back in the 70s when I was a kid, there was a set of baseball cards that didn't just have the picture and the stats on the back, but it actually had a play, like a single, a walk, a home run.
Oh yeah, Tops did those.
Yes, yeah, it was tops. And you could, shuffle them up and just turn them over, and basically that was your at bats for that. You could pass them
Mm-hmm.
to somebody else and have a baseball game. So the idea of Magic when it came out fascinated me, that somebody was actually going forward with that idea and making a collectible game out of cards. Unfortunately, I couldn't get into it until about the third edition, I think it was third edition Ice Age. And again, I was buying it and I love the idea of it, but I didn't know anybody to play. And we tried a couple things. I had a roommate who liked the Vampire TCG. It was originally called Jihad when it first came out. They decided maybe that's not the best title to use, so they just called it Vampire Collectible Card Game or something. Uh, there was also a horrible Magic knockoff called Ultimate Combat that was basically martial arts. And so you'd have a spin kick instead of a monster. You'd have a back fist instead of a creature. And it was amusing, but I look at it in retrospect, what I've learned about game design, and it was really quite terrible. They had, well, no, I won't bore you with details, but suffice to say, it was not well structured. There was no real strategy that you put, like Magic has, you're going to build a green deck that's going to utilize this style of play versus a black deck. The maneuvers would just have random attributes assigned to them. And yeah, wasn't so good. Anyway, so I've got all these games and I'm realizing as much as I like collecting, I don't have anybody to play, so it's not worth my time. So I swore off CCGs for a couple years, and I'm still a big wrestling fan. So when 2000 came around and there was this Raw Deal, I saw it in a Walmart. They had the box set with Stone Cold and The Rock, and they had some packs for sale. I said, it's on clearance here. It's obviously not selling well at this location. I'll buy it and try it out. And fell in love with it. I had a couple of friends who would come over, and the four of us would sit around and play SmackDown or whatever else on PlayStation. So this was a natural thing for us to just start building decks and playing. And they tried buying some, but they realized it was easier just to let me buy everything. And if they did get some packs or whatever, just give them to me, and I just build all of the decks for all of us. We'd had a friend who did that with Magic. You go over to Mark's house and you just grab a deck that was pre-constructed, and then you just grab whatever deck, and we'd all sit and play Magic. But here, you can do that with Raw Deal, and because on the first set it was so easy to get into, everybody just started playing. Meanwhile, I wanted to really understand how to play without the benefit of other players around, so I got very active on the Yahoo group and eventually became a moderator there because I would just get all these rules stuck in my head. So how does this work? Oh, I remember. You do this, that, and the other. Yahoo group was chaotic.
Still exists.
It does. It does. I think I'm the last moderator still around on it. And occasionally I'll get a message on Yahoo. They're like, you have one guy who wants to join the group. Why?
I get it. I get that once in a while for the SoCal one as well.
Yeah. So anywho, I got involved with that and just stayed fairly active with it. It wasn't until I went to my first Gen Con in 2004 where I met Baron, I met Mike, met a bunch of the name players I'd come to know online, and actually got to play in a real group. I'd started running tournaments there in Oklahoma City because I wanted to have at least somewhere for my guys to get together and play and maybe have some more legitimacy rather than just playing at the house, but actually potentially win cards. And we had this group of guys that were also doing something similar. They would have a shared card pool and they'd play together all the time. But these guys had a better handle on how to play competitively. So it made my guys get better at the game, and it made me get better as a deck builder, learning how to put in cards that were more useful, cards that I might have passed off as being, well, that has a cost, and that cost is too much. But then seeing in action, I realized, oh, overturning one card to play this knee smash, really, that's not a big deal. Okay, sure, yeah, take that fortitude jump. And all these fine bits enabled us to become more competitive. And my guys started to raise our level to where we could play these guys and beat them. And it was really fun to see. So I go to Gen Con and I get to meet all these guys and from different areas. And I met Baron, met Mike. They knew who I was from the Yahoo group. And it was good to talk to them. And one of the problems I'd always seen, because rules were the structure of rules and the understanding and the conformity of it just appeals to the way my brain works. And I have a very good memory. So it would just stick in my head. I know all the rules off the top of my head. But the rule structure for the game was not very good. The FAQ wasn't being updated frequently. So after meeting Baron and Mike face to face and talking to them, I came back a couple months later and said, guys, can I take a shot at updating the FAQ? Just let me get everything that's been published, all these rulings here and there, and put them all together. Because Ian was a good guy at getting the rules together. He had a Magic background, but because of family issues and health concerns, he couldn't always be there. And at the time, I was more available to, oh, who am I kidding? I had no life. But I could spend the time needed to really put all that together. So I basically looked at literally every card in the game and assembled every note I had ever seen. And when there were cases where we didn't have a ruling, I suggested one. So I went back and forth with Baron for a couple of weeks until we created a new comprehensive FAQ. And they said, well, you're doing really good at this. We'd like to make you the rules manager and have you do this. And Ian, unfortunately, kind of got phased out. There was talk of keeping him on as a consultant, but I think they just kind of said, let's just have Greek do it. So
what year was that?
2005.
Okay.
So I got to advise for, let's see, what's the timing on that?
Well, 05 would be after that same year as SS3 and.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense now. So like there was a lot of SS3. That was the first time they were really saying, why don't you take a look at these cards we're about to put out and see what you see? And I had some comments, are we doing this? Is this how this is going to work? Like moving from the old tag team to just having a tag team designation, where the old cannot play any belts except the tag team title belts meant you were a tag team, and now they just said, no, you are a tag team. Okay, well, how does that work? This versus that. So from there, they said, well, let's just bring you into the playtest group and have you be a part of it. So especially as we moved into the Battle Bag, Lethal Library, and then into the Afterburn era of Armageddon and so on, they were able to, well, no, I guess that would have been after. Okay, yeah, because SS3. Okay. So no, I didn't have a lot of input in Armageddon. I think that's why we had to go back and errata Vinnie Mac attack.
We talked about Armageddon because Nate wants to really break down, because my part of this program I'm doing here is I want to break down every release and just discuss that release and have like a 15-20 minute conversation of just that release, and that's the end of that that session.
Sure.
He picked Armageddon. That's what he wanted to talk about. He seems
that was a big
knowledge because that
Absolutely.
That introduced the first time introduced the volley mechanic, and it introduced throwbacks in Armageddon.
I was so happy to see Throwback because I wanted cards like Tori Enters the Fray to come back, but we can't print that because this superstar is on there and they're not in good standing with the WWF, WWE. So it was great to see the Throwback mechanic be able to bring these things back and update them and freshen up some of the effects. This card is good, but let's just tweak this dumb little thing we put on there, like end the turn or make you overturn cards to use this effect that really wasn't that great. So it was great to see that. From then on, I became the rules manager. When I would go to Gen Con, I moved away from playing in qualifiers to judging qualifiers, which strangely I found a lot more satisfying. I still love to play the game and would gladly play games and side games and pods, whatever, but I really had a lot more enjoyment running around helping the mechanism of keeping the game going rather than just engaging in it. 2005, I was also able to fly out to Chicago for the World Championships. That was the only one I was able to attend, but it was a great time. Nate talked about it on his chat with you, but it really was just a crowning moment of fun for all of it. And then getting to go to WrestleMania. Nate and I actually sat next to each other and bailed on the Undertaker casket match because, well, Undertaker versus Mark Henry. That's not what we came to see, as the card says.
That's not what we came to see. But, you know, you get the experience of WrestleMania, which is pretty awesome in itself. I mean,
that was bucket list for me. So many times I'd wanted to go when it was in Los Angeles, and somebody would say, "Oh, I've got a friend of a friend who's got tickets." Really? Yes, I'd like to go. And then no.
It's funny for WrestleMania because my first introduction to Raw Deal was before it ever got released. It was at the 2000 All Access in Anaheim for WrestleMania 2000.
Okay.
And Comic Images had a booth there, and I had already known Hank and especially Alan for several years because they had a license for trading cards for WWF at the time too. So I was always in constant contact with them. They always supplied me the information I needed for trading cards. So I went there knowing that they had an exclusive 3-card trading card set, oversized trading cards that I was interested in. And when I got there, that's when, you know, Hank and Alan, you know, handed me a flyer for this Raw Deal, this booklet, a brochure booklet. And then they handed me 2 decks, one for Stone Cold, one for Rock. They were the WrestleMania preview exclusive decks. I wish I had those back because I know, I think Drew has one. No, not Drew doesn't have one. Albert has one, and I think Vic has one because I gave them both away as prizes, not knowing, you know, and they're the only images I don't have.
Yeah, that is one of the few things I've never owned. I had a cardboard currency at one point. I think I got it from you.
You got it from me.
But when I started financing my move to California and needing the extra cash, I cut loose a lot of my duplicate stuff, cut down from being a suitcase player to just having, you know, at least one of each. That was good enough. And the cardboard currency was a no-brainer. It's like, this is cute, but it's not playable whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised at the resurgence of interest in that card. You know, I've had 4 of them in my inventory at times. You know, I had several of them when you got one from me. But now people are starting to realize, you know, just how it's kind of a cool nostalgia thing to have. You know, it's not a playable card, but the value of that card has gone up so high. It's also driven recently people to go and search for Royal Rumble boxes because I don't think they were aware of the fact that it was, you know, they were inserted in packs, and that, I mean, very rare. There's only 100 of them made. But someone tried to debate me on Instagram about, no, they were handed out at events, not in packs. I go, there were very few that were actually given at an event, I was told. But I do know for a fact they were all in packs. And in addition, go to the VelaCards website for Royal Rumble products. There's a sales sheet, the official sales sheet there, and it specifically tells you right on there to look for these random. There were supposed to be 2 different kinds.
I've never seen the one, but
well, that's a cool fun fact that I'm hoping somebody has some information about, because the original product, the sales sheet, which is always way ahead of before, you know, stuff gets released, it specifically said that there was going to be 2 different kinds. It says on it, 2 unique championship qualifying chase cards, tournament buy cards, and free entry cards.
All they ever made was the cardboard currency free entry one. But though we're so rare that Baron, at one point we talked about it, and at that point, this may have changed after we talked about it, but at that point he said, nobody's turned in a cardboard currency. They are more valuable than the $20 or whatever they were charging to get in. He said, and even if they did, I would take $20 out of my pocket, put it in the till, and I would take that cardboard currency. That's what he said.
Yeah, I'd buy them all day. But because of that knowledge now, people were kind of unaware of that in the last several months, specifically the last month and a half. There's been a huge, huge price hike on booster box. Well, they're only booster box anyways, that product. And people are trying to, you know, ask $400 or $500 for those boxes now.
Wow.
I mean, some of these boxes have gone up in value. I mean, some are a little obscene. I talked about with Nate yesterday about it, where somebody found a whole bunch of unopened product. One of it being an SS3 Rumble box, which it's pretty rare, but it's not as rare as the booster box, obviously, which is that's the real holy grail is the booster box of SS3. This person's got it on eBay right now, has it up there for about almost $1,300 he wants for it for that Rumble box.
Wow.
And so I'm like, you realize it's not a booster box. You realize that, right? Yeah, I'm aware. Okay.
The cards are still valuable, but there is a little bit less because they're set. I mean, you know what you're getting.
Exactly. I mean, it's not like it's randomized. You know exactly what you're getting those boosts in those Rumble packs. But hey, more power to these guys who want. And I see someone's got a Rev 3 box for $500. I think another one of my competitors out there, he has one for $650 for Rev 3. It's just, I mean, I don't know what they paid for it, which justifies the price point, but I just think that the individual cards that come out of there don't even equate to that kind of, there's nothing in that product that will boost that price, I don't think. I mean, yeah, what are you looking for, a My Way?
Yeah. Some is greater than its parts. I don't know.
I guess. I mean, that's why, you always make more money when you sell it by the pack than you would by the box anyways like that. You have a longer stretch of time to make your money back. So, booster packs is kind of like, shopping a la carte. So it's just, if I'm going to sell, packs for $10 a piece like that, it's $360 for a box. I'm going to probably sell the box for probably, $300 and, just make my money off the individual packs instead. But, yeah, so it's crazy to see stuff like those, like a cardboard currency, but I don't even know how we got into cardboard currency, but.
But I do recall that as that time was coming through, when the cardboard currency was coming out around Royal Rumble, is when I started to take an interest in not just doing rules analysis in the playtest sessions, but especially when Great American Bash came out, and I saw Mr. PPV. I said, guys, it's okay if I actually play test this stuff, right? I mean, I do the rules, but can I play test it too? I said, yeah, sure.
But I thought you were a play tester from long ago. Aren't your names in a lot of the rule books from older products?
It does, I think, starting with SS3, but I think it just says rules manager.
Okay.
And when I moved into playtester was specifically Great American Bash was when I actually built decks with the coming product. And there were some things that I was able to look at and go, we should probably, like JYD's chain was originally a multi. And, now multis it's so common to reverse a multi with Get the F Out or one of the other multi-stoppers.
Once is enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's become, once is enough has gone from being it could be nice to use to being a staple in face decks, 3X, no questions asked, that multi is less of a threat than it used to be. But at the time, you would have had to have 2 volley thises to stop it. So like doing that and losing everything. And there was something else that was too good about it. I don't remember if it was because it was something. But there was a few things that we caught along the way that I actually felt good because I was able to not just say, okay, rules-wise, we need to change this, but strategically, no. Like I argued for Lashley having a larger hand size because his ability was so hit or miss that he should actually have a larger hand to compensate for that, because he's going to spend his pre-match trying to build up whatever it is to get through the hand, the backlash, so that his ability will actually kick in once the cards hit the board. So that was a lot of fun. Revolution 1, I got in a little late on because I was having some weird email problem. So I didn't get the invitation, and I thought Baron was trying to leave me out. And so I finally got a hold of him, and he said, dude, I sent you an invitation months ago to the new, because he would move the playtest group each time so nobody could just access it via the same means.
Gotcha.
So that every set's playtesters was specific and intentional. So I didn't get in kind of late, but I was able to get in and see some of it. A lot of that they really tried to refine the rules on to make it clearer and more specific, so they had less of the sludge that they had from the classic sets, where a lot of times, unfortunately, they were kind of making up the rules as they went along. They'd make a card and say, well, let's make the rules to work this way. And that's a terrible way to build a rule structure. This is just a hand wave. Let's pick a rule to fix that situation. Like a good example was the abilities don't work in pre-match. And when we got to Great American Bash, I said, okay, this has to stop. This is dumb because you're saying abilities don't work in pre-match, but here you're saying here's Mr. PPV who's going to be able to discard a card to make unscripted work. Like, abilities work in pre-match. Stop this.
Yeah.
So I went through every superstar in the game and I said, here's the only cases that we'll have a problem with. There was some odd ones like Mankind Cactus Jack. If you play a bash card, they take no damage from it because it's -1D.
Yeah.
So what? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
The real one was JBL because they had kind of relied on that. Well, pre-matches aren't, abilities aren't active in pre-match. Yeah, okay. So we had to go back and say, all right, well, this one guy we need to fix because we don't want him to have an 18-card hand size.
Yeah.
Plus in the limo by the time he finishes playing all of his unique pre-match cards. So we cleaned that up some, and we were able to have a more streamlined rule structure with Rev. But yeah, it was the Great Civil War of Raw Deal in 2007.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit because Nate, had some experience in there too. We touched on a little bit about revs like that. Personally, firsthand with me, I'm a big fan of that format. It was a format that those are the only events that I ever won were rev formatted stuff. Like so, I mean, I gave my Ric Flair deck to Drew to take the Worlds 2 years in a row. It's like that. But it's Rev 3 is to me that was a fun release. But there's a lot of heat about Rev at that time. People just like, that's what killed the game. I don't think that's what killed the game. I think it was the last nail in the coffin for Raw Deal, to be honest with you. People can go back as far as Divas Overload, saying that was probably the time when things started going downhill for Rev, for Raw Deal.
Yeah, when Divas Overload was out, my player base vanished. People stopped coming. I'd have my one guy who would always show up rain or shine to everything, and that was it. But 6 or 7 other people stopped coming when Vengeance, Divas Overload, Vengeance, I think was the next one after that.
In order, yeah, you're going to be, you got your products. You're going to have Divas Overload came out, and then WrestleMania the 10s, then Vengeance, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, when Vengeance came out and Chain and Heat was introduced, and they had It's All About the Game, as pain in the ass as that card was, it at least gave new levels of strategy. And with all of this, people started showing back up. First tournament I held for Vengeance, I had like 10 people.
Okay, so they showed back up. So you started getting players back after Vengeance.
Yeah,
They completely abandoned Divas Overload, didn't they?
Oh yeah, and it wasn't. I saw what you said about it being the females. It wasn't that. It was just the whole actions. The game was suddenly about actions. You'd have what's supposed to be a wrestling match, and people are essentially getting in the ring and standing around talking, and then they halt the tables in the ring.
Which isn't too far from the product itself.
Well, yeah. And unfortunately, it looked less like wrestling matches and more like 20-minute promos.
Yeah.
And then they'd haul some tables in, and then they'd do a wheelbarrow slam through 3 tables, and that was it. And the person would die. That would be it. That would be the entire wrestling match. My little success story was when I went to my first Gen Con and played in my first qualifier. I had a deck that was specifically built to try to counter that meta. It was Road Dog. People were playing more pre-matches. I played less, and I dropped Break You. I was packing not a popular card at the time, but King Interferes, and I actually won a match because a Goldberg deck, I managed to get on the board, but then he did his Premier Raw and cut my hand down. And then he starts on his Action Solitaire, and I said, play cards until I tell you to stop. So he goes, okay. So he does his thing, plays this, does that, rolls out of the ring, grabs his table. He said, table. I said, stop. King Interferes, take 3. And he had 3 left in his deck. So I was able to
take it. Verbally baited him into that. I
mean, well, we were on kind of a time crunch anyway because we were just about to reach the time limit. But it was such an unpleasant era. And now I've talked to Mike Foley about this too, and he says part of the reason they went with Rev is because what people don't realize is that the game really peaked. I can't put my finger on when exactly, but it was somewhere after Backlash and before Divas Overlook. But there was a time when Raw Deal was one of the top 5 CCGs in the world. And that was great. But then with Divas, it started to drop down. And yeah, there was a resurgence. But we're just looking at what we see from the player base and the people who are talking. We're not seeing the sales,
Sure.
how much product is actually going out the door, whereas Mike had all that information. And he said, unfortunately, they were seeing a drop in the sales of product. One of the reasons, and something I never thought about, is the lack of headliners. So you've got your home team. It's got John Cena in it. You've got your remakes. Here's another Stone Cold Steve Austin. Here's another Rock. Here's these other decks where they're trying to bring people out. Mr. PPV was a good one because Rob Van Dam was so popular. That was right around the time that ECW was starting up the WWE ECW program.
Yeah.
He won a one night stand. So he was on a hot streak, and so having him headline was great. They were starting to bring some of the legends in, but they were still struggling to get those headliners out there to really draw the common fans in. Whereas starting over with Revolution, they had Triple H, Batista, Rey Mysterio, John Cena, boom, right, done. Then they get to Rev 3, and now they've got Shawn Michaels, Stone Cold Steve Austin. They've got the Ric Flair, they've got the names that are going to draw people in.
Sure.
And I got to buy that. Even if I don't really know what this game is, they become sort of like the person I was talking about before, where they're collecting the product, even if they're not really playing it. So with that decline, Revolution was one of the things they looked at, saying, how can we jazz this up? How can we reboot it without saying, oh, you like this game? That's great. Here's 20 sets worth of material to find, and good luck getting your hands when Tori enters the fray or what have you.
Yeah, it's I became bored with the original product because I knew that my deck building skill was never going to be on par with other people's, but there was just so much reading involved in a game that should have been more about like just kind of going back and forth game, which is a lot what happens with virtual right now. So which I really want to talk about some virtual stuff like that, because as much as important as you were in the original printed products like that, you picked up everything and moved it forward with virtual. And matter of fact, let's just dive right into that, because what made you decide to do virtual? Why would you decide to do virtuals like that? Knowing what you know now, of course, which is like it's a thankless job that everybody just seems to scream at you, and at least 2-3 times a year, you'd have to make a post up on TCO saying, listen, I'm out here doing this on my own free time. No one's paying me any money to do it. Just so you guys have it, and you want to sit here and bitch about it. What made you decide to do it, and what kind of hurdles did you have to go over to even, like, I guess you had to go through Mike in order to get permission, the blessing to do it? No?
Not really. I tried to talk to Mike about it, and Mike, well, here's the timeline. End of 2007, they say, Comic Images says, we're not going to print this anymore.
Yeah.
And they let the license go. Baron was still trying to get a hold of it, but WWE, I guess, moved on to Topps or somebody and let them have the license. So now, how would we go forward with Raw Deal when there's no license rights? There's no other wrestling company at the time in 2008 that was any sort of Impact, TNA, not on the level of WWE, ROH, no. It just isn't the fan base that's going to move the product on the level it needs to be to produce these cards. Plus, Comic Images is out, so they need to find another company, as CCGs are starting to decline in general, other than the big names, Magic, Pokemon, in favor of more online experiences. So Baron was doing what he could, and then we lost Baron. Leap Day 2008. I would forget. I couldn't believe it, because he didn't want people to know.
Yeah.
Like when I went to my last Gen Con in 2007, I bumped with Jason Griffey, and I asked him, I said, do you know why Baron's not here? It's not like too many people are going to yell at him about Revolution, because that's not it at all. He said, I'd rather not say. Baron asked me to keep it to himself, but later he told me that was why. It was Baron's health. So Baron passed away. Jason's out. Mike's done. He really never got into the game because he was a gamer. He was with the WWE already. He was working in the marketing department. He was a graphics guy and still is. And he can do great work with that. So he doesn't need to try to push this game to give himself a career to make a living. He could just go back to doing what he was doing before, making graphics, doing graphic design. So for him, he was done. If somebody came and said, I've got a business opportunity, and that doesn't mean I've got some money, like we talked about, like you talked about with Nate, guy wins the lottery and still just goes, no. So for him, he was out. And I kind of came to him and said, what would you think about that? Would you have anything you would want to share with me in the interest of keeping the spirit of the game going? And he basically said he wasn't interested. He said, I've got some things in notebooks, but I think I'd rather hold on to them just in case anything ever happens, and the game comes back into print. So I went, okay. But I felt like there was some incompleteness to the game. There were so many superstars that had been left out because they weren't with World Wrestling anymore. So they weren't going to get the logo on a card. And there's only so much backdoor support you can give by printing a suplex for Taz or a slam for A-Train. For those superstars who don't have that specific niche, you're not going to be able to make a card without their logo that's really going to help them out in a specific way. So I thought, well, what if we made like one last set that just gives everybody a perk and kind of helps everybody get what they need to be, and does a few things that always felt like they were missing in the game.
Like balance it out a little bit.
Sure. One of my things was, one of my little guilty pleasures was table, ladder, chair. I always felt like you don't just take a table and go and get it and roll out of the ring and then you set it there and maybe and I just didn't ever like the way it worked. Same with the chair. Chair shot was okay, but it was kind of plain. But you see so many times in a match, maybe they hit somebody with a chair, but it's laying in the ring, so they do the power bomb on the chair, or they hit their pedigree on the chair. Same in those TLC matches, you do a big slam onto the ladder. I was like, why don't we have this component in the game? So I thought, okay, well, let's add these maneuvers in. And we just sort of built on various ideas that came to us. And initially, my whole premise had been, I'm sort of a support staff for the people who are running things. I handle the rules, I do some play testing, I do some, wacky ideas. The earliest contribution I have as a card to the game, by the way, is Series of Punches. Not a well-known card, but somebody on the Yahoo group had said,
a little bit better than Stand and Switch.
Well, but somebody said, how come there's no face maneuvers? And Baron said, well, faces don't really do maneuvers the way heels do, like a back rake or, clutch on or hold on to the ropes, entangle in the ropes. And I said, well, yeah, they do. They do the 10 punches. They put them in the corner, the crowd chants along. So I had a card called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I can actually see in the original playtest breakdowns that used to be done where that was the name of the card, and they changed it to Series of Punches. And they added the can only be reversed and played after blah, blah, blah stuff to make it a little more playable, because it was getting to be so much reversibility that you come out with a new card and it's, well, why should I pack this new maneuver when I have this other maneuver? So trying to find a way to balance it without making it even a bigger power creep as it went on. So you don't have like a 5 fortitude, 15 damage maneuver that's just too big in the fortitude curve. So that was fun. And I thought, well, maybe I could bring those ideas that I've had in. But I was thinking in terms of backfilling somebody else who was leading. And I looked around and nobody else was leading. And one day I thought, could I do this? I mean, I'm just a rules guy. I just do some play testing, but maybe I could. And so I tried to have a very humble, team-oriented approach to this and say, look, I don't think I'm the next Baron. I just want to help this get going. And somebody has to be the final word to say, yeah, let's do it. No, let's not. We could make that discard 1. We could make it discard 2. I say we make it discard 2. somebody has to be that guy.
The buck
And
has to stop with somebody.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so you go from a rules manager type of position. So this is where Nate crosses over with you.
Right.
So I'm assuming you probably had a conversation with Nate, just kind of saying, "I'm anointing you as the rules manager. I'm now part of the design team."
Yes, he was always one of my right-hand guys. He will try to downplay his involvement if you try to raise him up and say he did
Oh yeah, I got a sense of that
yesterday.
yesterday because I kind of put him on my not I put him at a very high level.
And honestly, I will say he deserves to be there. If there is a virtual Raw Deal Mount Rushmore, Deva should be on that, hands down. There is no change my mind. Just fight me. But his contributions, he very much became me. Whereas I stepped up and sort of became in the Baron role, he stepped up underneath and became me. He managed the rules for me because I realized so often when somebody would say, well, it's this timing breakdown thing, and I'd have to, okay, I need to look at the timing breakdown, get in that mindset. And I'd done that plenty of times in the past, but it requires me to focus and really look at it and stare at it for a while. And for him, he had such an innate ability to do that. He has a remarkable recall, even better than mine, and can just come up with stuff where sometimes I'd have to, like, I'm aware of a thing, so I have to go find it and look at it. He just knows. He can recite card text in cases. So it was a natural thing to say, okay, please take the rules from me. Are you cool with this? You're good? Great. You're the rules manager now. But he was always somebody that I was going to and saying, what do you think about this? I have this idea for the horseman. Do you think this is too much? Or, I have this idea for a table, ladder, chair. Do you think if we word it this way, it'll work? And a lot of times he would say, that's good, but let's tweak it a little to say this, so that way it happens in this time. Like, yes, that's what we want. Thank you. So there is so much finesse that he has put into the game that, again, probably won't take credit for, that he really does deserve all of that credit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could not have done everything I've done without him.
Was Virtual One supposed to be it? That was it? Was your original idea was just like Virtual One, wrap it all up, let's give it a nice package and be done with it?
It was originally Revolution 4 was the title, and it kept that for the first 2 years, I want to say. And basically, we got to the end, and it was like, all right, that's it. Everybody's got a card. Everybody's got something. We tried to make everybody playable, close to it. Have fun.
Because I told a story to Nate when in the SoCal area, people were aware of TCO, but didn't go to it to actually know that there was virtual stuff coming out. So I would literally print out, 14, 15, 16 sets of everything and then hand them out to the players as prize support or, just for entering or for playing. Like, oh my God, did you make, no, I didn't make these. I'm not saying where I got them, but just enjoy them. So like that. Then once, Drew guys got, and then they got wind of like, they started doing it. Then, no, you're doing it. We know where you're getting them, but you're doing it. You waste your time. I would sit there for literally hours upon hours, printing, cutting, trimming, rounding quarters while watching CSI or something like that. Just sitting there for hours. Just, I got to get this done because I have a tournament tomorrow. I get it done.
And I would read about what you were doing out there in California. And at the time, I did not have I'm going to relocate to California mindset yet. But I'd read it and I'd think, oh, wow, that Vela guy, man, he's really got something going with his group. That's awesome to see. And it was encouraging to see people doing things like that for their groups, or, individually picking up and playing them and then finding their buddy who hadn't played in a while. Say, hey, come back, check out what they did. Remember that Jamie Noble deck was terrible? Look at this new card for it.
Not only that, but you guys introduced a lot of people that we've never seen before in Raw Deal. We had the Bret Harts and the Ultimate Warriors, and be like, holy shit, I can play this game. This guy, that's awesome.
That's definitely one of the things we tried to do. That was, if there were 3 things we wanted to do, it was to give everybody a card, make a few superstars that everybody knew about and everybody wanted, but they just hadn't been in, along with a few of the current talent, because there was so much in Revolution. There was a gap where, because they went from the superstars of 2006, like we said, RVD before,
mm-hmm.
and Andre and Kennedy, and then there was the year of Revolution where they were basically making everybody who was already printed in Classic, other than Kali and Umaga and some of the ECW guys like Sandman and Sabu.
Mm-hmm.
Now we come to 2008, and there's guys like MVP, Molina, some people who have come out who seem interesting enough to be worth making. Finley, he'd been around for years and had finally kind of fallen into a good gimmick where there was something worth making. I love to fight, okay. And I remember seeing that idea somewhere else of having a 5-card hand that you cycled, and it worked differently for that game, but the idea of it seemed good. And there's a band called Five for Fighting, and it just clicked in my head. He likes fighting, Five for Fighting,
Mm-hmm.
so it kind of came together that way. And some of the odd little ideas that I looked at from other games who were doing an online continuation. Buffy was one of them, because Buffy only had 3 sets and they stopped printing it. I think it was like it was almost the equivalent of a holiday set. But basically, they were doing like 1 season per set. So
Mm-hmm.
the third full set was the 3rd season. And a bunch of guys got together, took screen caps, and made more characters out of the remaining season.
Yeah.
Some of what was Angel and so on. I was impressed by what they were doing and sort of modeled some of the ideas on that. When we got done, and there was kind of people essentially saying, encore, this is great, why don't you guys keep it going? And
Little did you know, it'd be 12 years of your life.
Yeah. The gentleman by the name of Chris, I will probably blurt this out in 10 minutes when it pops into my head. It's on back order in my brain. Chris something or other. Templeton. Yes, Chris Templeton. He was a player down in Texas. I had a lot of the Texas players who would come up for Oklahoma games. So at the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I got to know a bunch of people down there. That's where I met Calvin. And Chris said, hey, I've got some crazy ideas for WCW guys. What would you think about maybe making like one more little, almost like a holiday set rather than a full set like you did for Revolution 4? So he said, okay. I talked to Randy. You guys want to do some more? Is there interest in this? Yeah.
How many people were on your team for First Virtual? Like, how many were on the team?
It came and went. I tried to do that first set as kind of an open beta. Like we talked to some of the people who were playtesters or people I knew to be experienced in the game, because here's where some people got annoyed with me, is because I might look at a guy who says, oh, me, pick me. And then I look at him, okay, have you done anything? I think you're on TCO, and I see you argue with a lot of people, but have you played
TCO,
on the level?
The world of TCO is a whole different interview.
But so you get random guy 5, 6, 7. Okay. And I look at him and I think, well, you're not necessarily a top level player. I'm not knocking his talent, but why haven't I heard of you before? Yeah, I know you from being a TCO personality, and you post and you talk, and that's great. But are you going to have the level of input that's going to be helpful? Are you just going to look at it, get spoiler shock, and go, OMG, these are too powerful? Or you're going to, look at it from only one direction and go, OMG, this sucks. Okay, that's not helpful for me. I need constructive criticism. I need you to say, here's why I think this set isn't very good. How do they get forwarded to? Or, yeah, you've got a cute gimmick here, and then your support cards boost the gimmick. But what does he actually do beyond that gimmick?
It's a hard process, by the way, because, like I said, I told Nate, when you gave me the green light for Mike and I to do which became Rev 4, because we toyed around the ideas so much. It was the real Rev 4. It was, well, because we just took it off that promo card, for Rev 4, no mercy. It was a process. Like I had that attitude of those guys on TCO where it'd be like, oh, I want to be a play tester. I want to do this. I want to do that. But having to you can't just throw out, well, this sucks, or this is why I want this to do this, and that's why. There was a lot of process, and I had never been through that process before. So, Mike was great because he would come up with all these amazing ideas, but all his ideas were so broken. I mean, it was like that term broken, but they were legitimately broken. And then I would try to tailor it back like that. I'd submit it to you and you go, that's neat and that's great. However, and then you would come back to me, and I was getting irritated with you because you would come back to me and say, we can't do this, we can't do that. And I'm like, well, you're destroying my entire ideas and da 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 da. It's like that. But I was not thinking like you guys thought, which was like you still had to incorporate the all access world. I said, I straight out told you, I don't give a shit about all access. So I'm going to give you what's revolution. And if you guys can tweak it for how you need before all access, because Mike, especially Mike, really hates the whole idea of making references to classic stuff on Revolution cards. And I go, but you have to.
And I've come around to it because for me, all access was fascinating. The idea that you could have, like, excuse me, the idea that you could have Batista. And now suddenly you got these great new cards from Revolution. Well, maybe part of that was wanting to cling to the idea of what the game used to be. Like playing Revolution was fun. For me, it tended to be as luck-based as the early sets, because I was always frustrated with the game originally in Premiere Fully Loaded when, let's say I sit down against Taz. I know he's going to throw suplexes, so I draw my opening hand. Oh, look, step aside, break the hold. Great. Okay, hit me with your suplex, hit me with your next suplex. And then, oh, I drew an escape move. And now he plays like his trademark finisher or something.
But you don't have enough fortitude to play manager interferes and
Right.
So I mean, what 10 was the number to hit at that time.
Much,
then you can kind of have a little bit more cruise control at that point. It's like that. Whereas in Revolution, 7 was the magic number.
Right. Which is a bit low, especially when you can hit it with one maneuver.
Sure.
That was always.
I know you despised a couple of reversals in.
Defense cards. I spoke out in playtesting and said, whoa, these are too good. We are giving people across the board the ability to. And Baron's like, no, they're fine. Well,
trust me, that's what I and as someone who was a lover of Revolution, man, I took full advantage of those defense cards because I don't think a lot of players really looked at those defense cards like that as that's an uncommon card, 7 for nothing. I mean, who cares? I'm like, you don't understand, man. These cards are amazing.
And they reverse trademarks.
Correct.
Which just made them so good. The other problem card I saw was Off Your Mark.
Off Your Mark, I was going to say that too. You hated that card.
It was too low. You could reverse anything. It was too good. And for me, it wasn't even just the annoyance of I've got this shiny card, it should be special, and now you're just reversing it with your regular reversal. It was also, I also thought it spoke to value. Like, the idea, how short can I make this? The idea that we want to sell product and you, the consumer, will buy our product because somewhere in there is a shiny card for the favorite guy you like. And then you get it and you put it in your deck and you're so glad to play it. And then I just play Off Your Mark. But you get it back and you play it again and I hit it with Off Your Mark again. And then I hit it with a defense card. But come on, man, I thought this card was supposed to be good. It got to where Off Your Mark was so frequent that trademarks were no longer a standard for, okay, this is a solid move that I want to put in, this will be special.
It wasn't as big a threat.
Yeah, exactly.
It just wasn't. You're like, okay, I'm at my 7. I think Off Your Mark, what, a 9?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it didn't. It's like, okay, 9. I'm really covered just like that, and then it just, yeah. I get it. It's like that. It was kind of like 1st to 7 kind of wins. The matchups depend. Like a Ric Flair could still have longevity in the long term.
Sure.
Elijah Burke was really good as well to recycle all the time. I had many classic matches with Mike. His Elijah versus my Ric Flair.
One of the other problems that Rev had, though, was each of the 3 sets were 1 and done as far as the superstars. There was no superstar support. I talked to Mike some in the Rev 3 days about what was planned for Rev 4, and that was supposed to be the first support cards. And I really wanted to see a Marine Taunt card for John Cena so that he could have something to take back to Classic and play after he dropped Kill the Beat. I thought that'd be fun to have some other kind of taunt because there's only Taunt the Fans, which is part of the reason we came up with taunted by the chanting fans.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, on you. Of course, in the end, we killed Kill the Beat. So, ironically speaking, but it did have a lot of fun in trying to develop those ideas. And looking at Rev 4, we were already thinking okay, what does Triple H need? Because the environment shifted. In the first set, he was really good because he could pick up a hold to stop the core or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then once Extremes came out, there was no solution to that. So Rev 2 really turned the environment on its ear, and not necessarily in a good way, because Extremes weren't balanced with the same rock, paper, scissors system that had been built into Rev 1. And the reversal base just wasn't as good. And I screamed about this, and we got, it's in Rev 2, it's got a picture of Randy Orton, I can't remember the name of the card, but they added extreme, reversal and extreme or something to this little action that wasn't all that special. So I can find it here real quick.
It's a non-superstar specific, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Because they had Not What We Came to See.
Not What We Came to See was, yep.
Settle the Score. There it is.
Yep.
Yeah, search Arsenal for a target.
Looking at it.
One card target your opponent's ring. And they just tacked, okay, reversal non-unique extreme core on it. Like, okay, but both those cards have limited ability when you're facing down the, they call it the aggression rule. Baron hated that term, by the way.
He had the aggression rule?
He did not like the term aggression rule. He liked the rule, just not the name the fans came up for it. But if I have a 0-2 core and I can't use it to reverse, I can still play it. All those extreme reversals were dead cards in your hand if your opponent were playing extreme. And I tried to point that out, and that's why I'm glad we made more extreme reversals. We got one in Virtual 1, judo takedown, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Judo takedown. And to give Triple H kind of a hand there, and to try to add a little bit more to the Revolution environment. But I think we did a better job with some of the stuff you came up with in Rev 4 that kind of balanced the environment there a little better. And
because it became a race to 7, that's what I was telling Nate, is that it's why the desperate moves I thought were kind of crucial. And it was just something that it wasn't even an intention at all. We were just play testing on pieces of paper all the time, throwing things out. It's like that. Okay, I'm going to be Revolution Rock, and you're going to be Revolution RBD, and playing back and forth. And it's like, man, either these guys are really broken in the sense that we're just it's really one-sided. Maybe it really is a rush to 7. But it'd be nice if I had something like late game that kind of like, I'm tired of getting my ass kicked, and I just want to not have to throw my cards on the floor. Really kind of cool to have something to play from anywhere, but I draw it from hand or from wherever, I can just go ahead and play it and just at least try to get on the board with 7, and give me a fighting chance. So it was that was strictly out of luck, out of just pure like, hey, this is kind of cool. Let's do that. What do you think, Creed?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it took me a while to separate myself from the idea of clinging to All Access as a format, but it really, especially as the game continued to evolve through virtual, and we had new Revolution sets and we had new virtual content, it just didn't make sense to keep trying to force the two together, because there's just too much. Even within Classic, people are trying to figure out how to balance the 0 damage reversals for Vicky, and how to have something for maybe drawing blank, how to have backlash reversals, how to stop aces, how to stop killing the reverse cards. So you got your back here in, or old school brawl, or what have you, to try to stop that. Now let's figure out how to stop a hold, an assault, an extreme, momentum, an antic. No, it's just too much.
Yeah.
I do feel like one of the good things we did was to come up with the use of non-maneuver card, because later we find ways to work that in. And even if we're not using antics, if we have something that's like those mid-match storylines, we've only got a couple of those in the game, but when they come out, suddenly there's a way to reverse that. Or I think we gave somebody, I think it's Teddy Long, and I think the Bella Twins have a way to do it, where they can play a pre-match card during their turn. And now you can say, oh, hey, stop a non-maneuver card. So it did kind of work out in our favor. It was a happy accident, as a lot of times things like that can be. Kind of like your desperate maneuvers you're talking about. But I was glad to see that you guys were able to sort of take the lead with Revolution. For some of those ideas were a bit much. I remember sitting down to a game with Mikey at your house, and he had an early version of Kofi.
Oh, that
And
was
so
horrible.
I played a maneuver. Okay, cool. And then he goes, I do a thing. I'm like, okay, that's good. Yeah, because I think it had momentum or something because he was behind in fortitude. And then he plays the mid-match reversal like a 22-22. I was like, what? Whoa, 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 whoa. He had momentum also. I
Yeah,
was like, well, I hit you once and you get 22 on the board.
yeah.
Maybe we need to work that. I know he wasn't happy with the criticism, but
He takes criticism a little hard to us like that, but I couldn't ask for a better partner in the sense of someone who's
yeah.
very meticulous in the fact that he documents and archives everything. Uh, but dealing with trying to create cards like that, the ideas come out, but they're always like, hey, this is my idea. I'm always going to win, so figure out how to dumb it down. Because
Now,
I think coffee was his that was his design. I believe Seamus was his design. I think Mark Henry was his design as well, original design as well. I think the rest were mine.
I think Mark Henry was definitely one I was in on because I liked the idea of pushing those blank maneuvers.
Yeah.
And so I definitely was saying, hey, I dig what you're doing here. Let's develop that a little further. What was I getting at? Something that we mentioned though about that early Kofi. The problem is you can make the argument that if everybody's strong, then everything balances out. And then if you just raise the level through card support of the guys who were printed before, then everybody's on the same playing field. The problem is it reduces interactivity, in my opinion. When in that scenario where Kofi's going momentum, mid-match antic, momentum, mid-match maneuver, boom, I have 2042. If everybody could do that, maybe that's balanced. But what about all of those steps you're taking about trying to get fortitude along the way? You've taken those out, and suddenly nearly everything in your deck is playable at 20 fortitude. So you're not going through the process. You're not going through the back and forth. You're kind of skipping ahead to, it's like reading the last chapter in a book. You don't go through the process of how you got there. And I feel like that takes away from some of the interactivity of the game, which was once we got past that first set, I really wanted to make sure there was a lot of interactivity in the game, which is why we had the drawing a blank, the Vicky, and other means to help people get on the board. Why so many superstars would get okay, you get a free shot, maybe you get a small maneuver in your ring,
Mm-hmm.
or like Lita got that backstage card where she just gets 2 fortitude dropped into her ring. We tried to find clever ways to help people get something on the board so they could be interactive in the process. I wouldn't get just shut out sitting there at 0 fortitude. I know some people, even recently, as a couple of weeks ago, were talking about this on Discord. They're saying, "Oh, I feel like everybody's just getting free shots." Well, part of that is you have to adapt to this, and this is something that has always been a part of Raw Deal. You could not take your deck from, say, Backlash and expect it to automatically do as well once you got to the next set. You couldn't take your deck from Diva's Overload and go to Vengeance. You couldn't take your deck from Vengeance and go to Armageddon. I had that. We had a very NPD deck in Vengeance that I think it was Evolution Pays to Be Evil. And it would just play, bait, hit all this stuff, and just run you over. But the next set brought volley this. So I tested with a guy, and every time I dropped Pace to Be Evil, he had a volley this, and it made the game competitive. So I was a little disappointed at first because, hey, I'm not winning easily. But that was the lesson I learned from that.
But there are guys out there that are disappointed because when Virtual came out, the big argument from a lot of these old school guys who refused to give Virtual chances, like, you killed my Eugene deck, you killed my Andre deck, you killed my Piper deck. They don't understand balance apparently. There's no fun. It's fun for them because that's their guy, that's their deck. I come into an event and I can just go lay down my Piper decks like I said, you're done. I mean, you're done the pre-match phase. You're just done. There's no fun in that for me. Why would I want to come back and play again? So then eventually there's no one else for you to go ahead and play your broken pile of crap, known as whatever it is. I thought that Virtual balanced that out. Yeah, you took away some ability from people, but you gave them something else. They don't look at it that way. You just took away my win.
Yeah, we always tried to do that. If we took away a grenade launcher, then we gave you, a handy set of steak knives or something. We tried
Yeah.
to say, okay, we're going to bring you down, but you get this other thing instead. Piper got more cards. One of the reasons I liked that we did a Piper remake, even though he's the rowdy one, is kind
Right.
of limited in the flexibility from point of view because he's all about those sleepers, was that it gave us a chance to make new cards for Piper. We made a new RMS Piper's Pit that did something different other than that broken junk that we screamed at Baron. This is too much. And, oh, no, it'll be fine. Anyway, it gave us a way to tone down Andre and then say, yeah, but here's, some other stuff instead. Here's Eighth Wonder, so you have more of a play set to work with rather than just that one, pile of superpowered cards, because that was intended to be all he ever got.
Yeah.
So we tried to adapt things. When Eugene was taking all the virtual cards and easily winning world championships, it was like, okay, we're going to have to scale them back. Sorry, no virtual moves, but there are already so many in Classic that you can work with. We had a good discussion in Discord the other day about all the options he has just from the printed cards. And there's plenty of power in that. You don't need more. And unfortunately, there are people who do approach the game with a closed mindset. This is what I want to do. Oh, when I played the game before, I used Eugene. I did this. I always won. I should be able to do this.
Correct.
No, it's not going to work like that. But if you take the time to adapt, if you change your strategy and evolve, just like you had to do back in the day.
And with any game. Yeah,
because they have to. Otherwise, why get interested in the next 3 sets of a game if your deck from 3 sets ago is still top tier?
Yeah.
What's the point? That should be the point of a game that evolves and grows and gains more sets. It should evolve. And that's where we tried to take virtual. One of the things I looked at when I was looking at the Buffy cards was that they were making, and I'm not an experienced Buffy player. I've only ever sat down and played in one game session, but I love the design of the game. But when I looked at what they were doing, it seemed to me like they were just making new characters, like new superstars for Raw Deal. So they would make this guy, that guy from season 4, season 5, but it didn't seem like they were building the functionality of the game. You were still using the core mechanics from the first 3 sets. You just had new characters to do it. And I wanted to grow beyond that. That's where drawing a blank really came from, was the idea of what if something bad was something good? I've got these blank cards. What if they actually meant something? I've got this blank ability. What if a blank ability actually meant something? Excuse me. What if you're in a situation where Cerebral Assassin blanks your ability and you go, ha, but I've got this for that. It adds to more of that counterpoint, like Nate was talking about, that really makes the game feel more interactive and alive.
Yeah, I just wish that more people would actually give, and I think it's coming a little bit more now. There's guys, it's been so many years now. Some guys are kind of like, all right, listen, I guess I'm going to, step in this virtual world now and kind of check out some of these cards like that. And some guys doing it smart where they come in like, we're just going to focus on this set. And that's all we're going to focus on is this set and kind of these new characters. But there's still some people out there who, especially like the Chili group, who are a great group of guys down there that do a lot of great stuff, and they do some great artwork too, and they have their own virtual sets. I don't know how it works. I have no idea how it interacts, but it seems like that people are like, I don't like the TCO stuff. I'm doing my own stuff. I don't understand. Okay, we're gonna. I just don't understand.
It's a tricky balance to walk between trying to hear people, and this is something I've been accused of. You don't listen to people. No, I do. I listen to people all the time. But just because you're saying something doesn't mean you're right.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, I should be able to do everything I want with my Eugene deck. I'm sorry. When I sit across the other side of the table from you, I'm not going to agree with that point of view.
Yeah.
But that's okay. It's not about necessarily getting what you want. It's about being heard. And most people don't realize they are being heard. There's a lot of changes we made. Sandman, when we made Sandman in Virtual 6, at the last minute, people said, okay, I like your design, but man, that card looks plain. So I got with Tim, and the night before, we hashed out a better image for his Superstar card. And boom, hey, we made it better. I mean, it's just a graphic, but still a
I mean,
lot
it's a
of those.
graphic. I mean, you're gonna bitch and complain about a graphic. I mean, come on.
Yeah, but still, that's the kind of thing we tried to do to give people the best game we could. And it's just,
I guess the
it's
proper
just not
mentality in doing that is like, going ahead, you can't please everybody. There's just no way.
right.
You can't. And so someone in your position after all these years like that, you take the brunt of the criticism for a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth, there's arguments, there's disagreements going on TCO, and it gets heated sometimes like that. And I just don't think that people understand, and again, having a very small, minute experience of doing Rev 4, I just don't think people have any understanding of just the amount of time, effort, the brain power it takes to go through it and design stuff like that. Then you have to sit there and have you tell me how this is a piece of shit or this doesn't work or you're ruining this. Like, I don't see them designing cards. I don't see them going through the headaches like that. And when they do, it's just like, hey, I get to 10 fortitude, I win. Okay, that sounds like fun. It's just it's a lot to take, and I don't know. I commend you for having to put up with it for over a dozen years.
And to be clear, I'm still interested in the development of the game, and I'm sort of taking more of a advisory role.
I've seen
Especially,
that. I've seen you chiming in here and there, and I'm really like, I don't, I admit, as I told Nate, I don't visit TCO as much as I used to. So when I go in, I kind of just check some things out. I just saw for the first time, I saw your cutting room floor, stuff like that. I freaking love all that stuff. Those are some cool things. I think those are pretty cool, and it's kind of cool. I imagine there's probably stuff from the cutting room floor all the way back from Virtual 1.
maybe some even back into the original game, though I might not necessarily have images for that. But it's something I'd like to try and do if I can just remember. Oh yeah, I remember that one thing. So it's a matter of remembering it and then writing it down, so I remember to talk about it. But these are things I wanted to do while doing virtual, but it's just like you said, people don't really realize because you have a concept, and you take the concept, then you need to develop whether that's something that can be developed. Then you need to write it down.
And that can be developed is not necessarily about even the mechanics of a card sometimes. Sometimes it's as simple as what people always complain about. Well, we don't have images for that person. It's just not possible for us.
Yes.
And they're like, well, just screen capture the DVD. It's like, you don't understand. Do you want the level of quality that you've been getting all these years? Or do you want to just have some screen capture from some, I don't get, people just don't understand. Like, well, I can't believe Hardcore Holly hasn't been made because, he's been around forever. Great, he has, but where are the quality images we need to support his moveset and his character?
Also, a lot of times I hear that. I just need to throw this in real quick as a little bit of self-defense. People would say, why didn't you make X? And without wanting to make it confrontational, I always feel like, what did X do?
Exactly.
Okay, you remember him because he had a cool look or something.
I always go to Norman Smiley. I understand people love Norman Smiley, but to me, it's like, really? If he was as popular now because you guys want him as he was then, he'd be a huge superstar.
Right, exactly. There was just enough that we could make a character around him, and he's one of those that's on the fence that if I had it to do over again, would I have made Norman Smiley? Probably not, because he's not supportable. We can't come back later and say, oh, remember that thing you did last week? Let's make that into a card.
Was there ever the thought process, because recently been talking about this with other people before, was there ever the thought about just making, you know what, we're not going to flesh out a whole 10-card set for some superstar. Why don't we just make some guys be promos, just a face card and one support card, and that's it?
Sometimes the challenge with that is that you have to make them so incredibly powerful that they don't necessarily need support. Good examples of people that I would not have made, Michael Tarver. We wanted to make him to include him as part of the Nexus set, but did we really need a superstar from Michael Tarver? What did he end up doing? Ezekiel Jackson, he was the latest big black guy, big power guy. It seems like there's always somebody around, whether it's Titus or Apollo Crews, there's always somebody in that niche role that Vince likes to have. But Ezekiel Jackson really didn't do anything. And he didn't really have a gimmick. He was just there. And we included him because he was in the core. But if we had it to do again, we probably shouldn't have. And now when we try to support him, well, what was the last card I made? I think it was like the Core Flex. It was a picture of him posing because that's what he did. He posed because he had big muscles.
Yeah.
And that's when people say, well, why don't you make a card for that?
That's going to win you matches.
Yeah. So,
well, I mean, I know we can go on and on and on for a lot of stuff here when it comes to virtual stuff. And I do intend to come back and talk about virtual releases. Like I said before, I'm going to break down every release, and I'd love to have you back about talking about specific, especially comic image release stuff. And just kind of go over like, you know, what was the thought process of Divas Overload, blah, 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 and just talk about real quick about that release. You know, when I talked to Drew about it, we're going to kind of take Premiere and Fully Loaded, since there was no backlash at the time, and kind of group those together as one topic, and then go forward. I'm not going to do them in any order. Just kind of be random about it. Just kind of go through different things and say, you know, hey, well, what was the whole point of volley this and that, that kind of stuff. But, we'll just talk about certain things and definitely talk about virtual stuff because it seems to be an ongoing thing. So let's close this out with some final thoughts about, like, now that you've kind of taken more of an advisory role, how do you feel about the future of virtual? You think it's in a healthy state? Is there some cool stuff coming down the road that you know about, or how do you feel about it?
I've had discussions with Eric, and I have access to what they're developing, and I think it's got a lot of potential. I think there's some real life interferes that have slowed things down, like has happened in the past. But I think Raw Deal players have a lot to look forward to yet, and they're in good hands.
Okay, that's good. Very good. Well, I always enjoy talking to you, sir. It's been a long time since I've actually had some sort of face-to-face engagement kind of thing with you. So I know schedules are crazy. Nate has the idea of having the three of us get on. He would love to have that. But your guys' schedules are always so crazy.
Yeah.
I'm more of a stay-at-home dad kind of thing now. So, but I still have VelaCard stuff, which is, kind of 24/7 whenever I want anyways. And Mike handles most of the stuff anyways. My greening stuff is shut down for the year for the most part. But anytime you guys are available, just let me know. I'd love to do another session with you guys, or have both of you, or just even individual. I mean, I got to reach out to some other people that I think especially from those comic images days, I'd love to have and talk to, but I don't even know who to reach out to. So maybe offline, you can shoot me off some suggestions of people that might be interesting that I've never met before. So, all right, man. Well, let's do this again soon.
Definitely.
All right. I appreciate your time, buddy. All right. Talk to you soon.